Have you ever found yourself stuck in that painful space of silence, wondering why someone who clearly thinks about you won't make a move? It's maddening, isn't it? The mind races, spinning questions and doubts. If they cared, why wouldn't they say something? Why does silence feel so loud? What if I told you that much of what we believe about love, action, and care is a myth? That the common assumption, if they care, they act, is not only wrong, but actually traps us in emotional turmoil. Today, you're about to discover a truth that will shift your entire perspective on silence and those who hold it. This isn't about waiting or chasing. It's about understanding, owning your power, and transforming your relationships through Stoicism. This is about Stoic relationships, not the empty kind, but the deeply grounded, resilient, and self-aware connections that thrive on clarity and inner strength. The problem is clear. You're caught in the limbo of their silence. You feel the weight of absence in a way that chips away at your peace and confidence. The size of this problem? It's massive. Because when someone who matters to you stays quiet, it's not just a gap in communication. It's a battlefield of fear, pride, and unspoken truths. It's a quiet war inside their mind and yours. The stakes are high because your emotional energy is precious. You deserve clarity, growth, and respect, not confusion or guessing games. But here's the solution that many don't see coming. Silence can be power. Your silence can be power. And understanding why they stay silent is the key to reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. This is not about punishing anyone or waiting for them to wake up. It's about you stepping fully into your own growth, shedding illusions, and mastering Stoicism to navigate this space with wisdom and dignity. What if the silence you dread is actually your greatest tool for transformation? What if, instead of breaking you, it could make you unshakable? So ask yourself right now, are you ready to stop chasing shadows and start seeing the deeper story behind silence? Are you prepared to shift from reacting to responding, from uncertainty to clarity? Because the insights ahead will flip the script on what you thought you knew about silence, fear, pride, and emotional control in relationships. They will guide you to become the calm in your own storm, the master of your peace, and the architect of Stoic relationships built on authentic connection and inner strength. Stay with me, because this journey isn't just about understanding why they won't move. It's about empowering you to rise beyond the silence and step into your fullest self. 1. The fear of being first, why they're frozen in place. Why does someone who thinks about you every day remain silent, paralyzed, unable to make the first move? The answer often lies not in a lack of feeling, but in a profound fear. The fear of being vulnerable, the fear of rejection, and the fear of exposing their true selves. Imagine standing on the edge of a vast emotional cliff, hand trembling over the leap, the unknown below filled with uncertainty and risk. That leap is reaching out, breaking the silence, making themselves seen. To them, it feels like standing on a ledge without a parachute, no safety net below to catch them if they fall. This fear is not weakness. It's a deep, raw human condition, intensified by pride and the stoic facade they have built around themselves. They wear silence as armor, because to speak would be to risk showing cracks in that armor, revealing uncertainty, pain, or confusion. They desperately try to hide. How often have you found yourself holding back a message, fingers hovering over the keyboard, heart racing with what-ifs? What stops you from sending that text or making that call? If you look honestly, it's the same fear. Fear that the courage to break the silence will be met with silence in return, or worse, outright rejection. This fear is a prison, locking them in a standoff between what they feel and what they dare to express. The paradox is clear. They are thinking about you constantly, watching from the shadows, but the very act of reaching out feels like an impossible risk. It's a vulnerability few can bear, especially in a world that often equates emotional openness with weakness. Pride and ego whisper cruel commands. Do not be the first to break. Do not admit the impact this silence has had on you. Do not lose the upper hand. Yet this pride, this silent refusal to be first, only prolongs the emotional stalemate and deepens the distance. Could it be that the fear of vulnerability is so overwhelming that it outweighs even the desire for connection? How often have we mistaken silence for indifference, when in reality it is the loudest scream of fear we refuse to acknowledge? The truth is, being first means risking everything: rejection, humiliation, loss of control. They may watch your stories, follow your updates, linger on your posts, all the while trapped in this paralysis. They crave connection, clarity and resolution, but are immobilized by the terror of exposure. Is this not a lesson in Stoicism itself? To face the discomfort of uncertainty and lean into the courage that vulnerability demands. Yet, most people do not. Instead, they retreat behind silence, hoping you will break first, hoping to protect themselves from the fall. But what does this do to the one waiting, the one hoping for a sign, a message, a spark? It breeds confusion and pain, leaving you to wonder if your worth is tied to their courage. In this dynamic, the fear of being first traps both parties in a limbo of inaction and misunderstanding. Stoicism teaches us to master our emotions, to accept what we cannot control and act with reason where we can. But when faced with the silent barrier of another's fear, reason can feel powerless. The one who remains silent wields an invisible power over the other's peace, a power born not of strength, but of fear. They hold the cards, not because they are stronger, but because they refuse to risk loss. This creates a dangerous illusion that silence equals strength, but silence is not strength, it is avoidance. It is emotional self-protection dressed in the guise of control. It asks you to wait, to hope, to decode every small sign or lack thereof. But waiting on fear is a slow poison to the soul. Are you willing to linger in this place of uncertainty, wondering if they will ever overcome their fear? Or will you choose to see their silence for what it truly is, a reflection of their own inner battle, not a measure of your value? Consider this. Fear is universal. Everyone has it, but few have the courage to face it openly. When you understand that their silence is not a rejection but a symptom of this fear, you gain a profound Stoic insight. It allows you to detach your worth from their inability to act, to stop shrinking in their shadow and begin to grow in your own light. You see, the Stoic path is not about waiting for others to evolve, but about becoming the calm in the storm, the grounded center who no longer depends on another's bravery to define your peace. What would happen if you stopped waiting for them to be first? What if you shifted your focus inward, toward your own growth and emotional mastery? The fear that holds them back cannot control you anymore once you own your own strength. The challenge then becomes not to chase or beg for their courage, but to embody your own. This doesn't mean you must reach out or bridge the silence yourself, but rather that you refuse to let their fear dictate your emotional state. What would it feel like to embrace the discomfort of silence as a space for your own transformation, to turn the frustration of unanswered thoughts into a practice of stoicism, accepting the moment as it is without needing it to be otherwise? When you start asking these questions, you begin to break free from the emotional trap set by their silence. You reclaim your power by acknowledging the truth behind their paralysis and refusing to be held hostage by it. So next time you wonder why they won't make a move, remember, It's not about you being unworthy or unloved. It's about their fear of stepping into vulnerability first. And in that knowledge, find your peace, because you cannot control their courage, but you can control your response. You can choose growth, calm, and clarity, the very essence of Stoicism, even in the face of their silence. This understanding reshapes the entire dynamic, shifting you from the role of the anxious chaser to the steady master of your own emotional world. And isn't that the ultimate goal of Stoic relationships? To build connections rooted not in neediness or fear, but in mutual respect, honesty, and inner strength. So reflect on this fear of being first, not with bitterness or blame, but with clarity and compassion. Recognize that it is a human struggle, a moment of paralysis many endure. And then decide, will you wait in the silence or will you rise? Above it, the choice is yours. The courage to move forward does not always come from the other side. Sometimes it must begin within you. Are you ready to embrace that power? 2. The power of your absence. How silence creates pressure. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the loudest presence in a relationship is the one who is no longer there? The absence of communication, the silence that fills the space where connection once thrived. It isn't empty or meaningless. It is a force, a powerful presence that creates pressure and unease in the one who remains. When someone stops reaching out, stops responding, or simply withdraws, they shift the emotional balance. What was once predictable becomes uncertain. What was once familiar becomes a question mark. And in this vacuum, the mind races. Your absence does not go unnoticed. They feel it deeply, perhaps more than you realize. It's not just about missing the sound of your voice or the texts you used to send. It's about the void you leave in their daily existence. The emotional energy, the care, the consistency, the softness, the availability that once grounded them. This absence shakes their foundation. It forces them to confront the reality that you are no longer an emotional safe haven. It disrupts their narrative, challenging the comfort of old patterns and pushing them into a place of discomfort and reflection. Have you ever imagined the impact of your silence from their perspective? It is like walking into a room that once brimmed with warmth and light, only to find it cold, dark, and empty. That chilling emptiness is your absence, a presence disguised as silence. And for many, this absence is unbearable because it demands accountability. It demands a reckoning with what they have lost and what they took for granted. When you were there, they felt secure. Your presence was a balm, a steady force to lean on. But now, in your silence, they experience a void that mocks their pride and exposes their vulnerability. Pride is a double-edged sword. It keeps them from reaching out, but also magnifies their suffering in silence. They might tell themselves they don't care, that they have moved on, or that your absence doesn't affect them. Yet beneath this facade, the pressure builds, invisible but relentless. The longer you stay silent, the heavier that pressure becomes. It creeps into their thoughts, distorts their emotions, and unsettles their sense of control. In Stoic relationships, absence is not simply a withdrawal. It is a powerful tool that reveals truths and initiates transformation. You are not merely stepping away. You are creating a space where old illusions crumble and real understanding begins. You do not owe anyone explanations or justifications for your silence. This is not a punishment or a game. It is a boundary, a declaration of self-respect, and a practice of Stoicism in action. You protect your peace by withdrawing your emotional availability when it is no longer honored or reciprocated. This absence compels them to face what they have avoided, their own role in the breakdown, their failures to show up, their inability to meet you halfway. And that realization is terrifying. It confronts them with the consequences of their actions or inactions. and the reality that you might not return as before. How often have you been in a situation where your absence was the catalyst for a shift that words could not achieve? Silence, in its rawest form, forces a reckoning. It demands that they sit with the discomfort of loss, reflection, and accountability. This is not a comfort zone for anyone, yet in Stoicism, discomfort is the path to growth. By holding your silence with calm strength, you embody a principle far more powerful than reaction, the principle of emotional sovereignty. You no longer respond to their attempts to provoke or confuse you. You no longer fill the void they have left with desperation or explanations. Instead, you sit firmly in your own peace, letting your absence speak volumes. This presence in absence is not passive, it is a conscious act of power and discipline. It is the embodiment of Stoicism's core tenet, to control what you can and accept what you cannot. Your absence becomes a mirror, reflecting back their truth, and what they see may be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. It shatters the illusion that you are theirs to control or manipulate. It reveals the cracks in their pride and the fears beneath their silence. They begin to understand that the person who once showed up for them is no longer available as before. And this knowledge rattles them to their core. What they believed was steady and permanent is now uncertain and fragile. This pressure is the unspoken language of absence, a force that unsettles and awakens. It challenges their narrative and forces a choice to grow, to confront, or to continue hiding behind silence. Meanwhile, you stand firm, grounded in the Stoic strength that your value is not determined by their response. You have moved beyond the need for their validation, their apologies, or their efforts. This shift is not easy, nor is it quick. It demands patience, resilience, and a deep commitment to your own growth. But the rewards are profound. You reclaim your emotional freedom and create space for healthier, more honest relationships, ones where presence is earned, not taken for granted. The power of your absence lies in its ability to create clarity. It removes the noise of mixed signals and forces both parties to face the reality of the relationship. It cuts through illusions and emotional fog to reveal what truly matters. And while this process may feel lonely or difficult, it is a necessary passage in the journey towards Stoic relationships. Relationships built on mutual respect, honesty, and inner strength. So ask yourself, are you willing to embrace the power of your absence? Are you ready to sit in the silence, not as a punishment, but as a statement of your worth and growth? Can you hold your peace even when others cannot? This is the challenge Stoicism presents, to cultivate an unshakable inner calm that no external circumstance can disturb. Your silence, your absence, is your voice now. It speaks louder than words. It carries the weight of your boundaries and the strength of your transformation, and it will not go unnoticed. If this insight resonates with you, if you're ready to stop chasing noise and start embracing your own power, then like and comment #1 below to let me know you're with me on this journey. Subscribe to the channel for more wisdom on Stoicism and Stoic relationships that help you build emotional mastery and personal growth. Together, we will rise above the chaos and become the calm in our own storms. 3. The ego games. When silence becomes strategy. When someone you care about is silent, despite clearly thinking of you, it's easy to mistake that silence as disinterest or absence of feeling. Yet beneath the surface, silence can be far from passive. It can be a deliberate strategy shaped by ego, a complex emotional game played often without full awareness. Ego, in its many forms, seeks safety above all else. It builds walls, not bridges, and wields silence as a shield against vulnerability and loss of control. Think about the maze of emotions that silence can create. One moment they are present, In subtle ways, a like on a post, a view of your story, a vague message, and the next they vanish without explanation, leaving you spinning in uncertainty. This inconsistency isn't accidental. It's a manifestation of emotional control, subconscious or conscious, a push-pull dance where power dynamics play out silently yet fiercely. These ego games are not about love or connection in their truest sense, but about control. Control of the narrative, control of emotions, control of who holds the upper hand. The silent player waits to see if you will react first, testing your boundaries and emotional resilience. Each small gesture or lack thereof is calculated to provoke a response, a sign that you still care, that you are still reachable. But why would someone risk this emotional manipulation? Because vulnerability terrifies them more than distance. To speak openly, to admit ongoing feelings or regrets, is to remove the mask of stoic strength they have put on. It is to expose themselves to the possibility of rejection or the unraveling of their carefully maintained image. Instead, they choose silence and subtle tests, hoping you will break the stalemate, that you will do the emotional heavy lifting they fear. This dynamic is exhausting to both parties. You find yourself deciphering clues, replaying interactions, and doubting your own perceptions. They remain behind their walls, shielded yet suffering, trapped in a paradox where silence both protects and isolates them. How often have you checked your phone, hoping for a message that never comes, or analyzed a vague social media post for hidden meanings? This is the invisible chess game that ego plays, and many fall into its traps without realizing it. In Stoicism, the wisdom lies in seeing through these games, recognizing them not as truths, but as projections of fear and insecurity. Silence as a strategy is a mask worn by those unwilling to confront their own emotional turmoil. It is a defense mechanism rather than a sign of disinterest. To navigate this effectively, you must cultivate emotional clarity and detachment. When you understand that their silence is not about you, but about their internal struggle, you free yourself from the anxiety of needing to fill the silence or prove your worth. This does not mean you accept manipulation or tolerate emotional neglect. Rather, you rise above it with calm discernment, choosing when and how to engage without losing your center. The ego's games lose power when you refuse to react impulsively or out of desperation. Your silence becomes your shield, your stoic stance against being drawn into drama or control plays. This requires discipline, the discipline to hold your boundaries, to not chase breadcrumbs or vague signs, and to not fall for emotional bait. Such mastery over your reactions is the essence of Stoicism applied to relationships. Imagine the freedom of no longer being the puppet pulled by their silent tests, but the grounded observer who decides with clarity and calm when to engage. This shift changes the entire dynamic. The person who once held the power through silence and manipulation finds themselves confronted with a new reality. You no longer respond to their games. This loss of control can be disorienting and even panic-inducing for them. But for you, it is liberation. You are no longer entangled in the invisible strings of ego's emotional chess. You are moving with purpose and peace, unaffected by their attempts to unsettle you. What's more, this awareness allows you to see the truth beneath the silence, that their fear and ego are barriers not only to reconnecting with you, but to facing themselves. The longer they cling to silence as strategy, the more they isolate themselves from genuine growth and healing. Meanwhile, you cultivate stoic relationships grounded in honesty, respect, and emotional maturity. You understand that real connection requires courage, not games. You know that silence used as control is not love, but fear in disguise. And you choose to protect your own peace above all else. This perspective shifts your focus from trying to decode their silence to fostering your own inner clarity and strength. You become the calm, steady force in your own life, no longer waiting for their permission to be whole. In this space, you embody the true power of Stoicism, to remain unshaken by external uncertainty and to cultivate an unbreakable sense of self-worth independent of others' actions. So when faced with silence used as a game, ask yourself, am I being drawn into their maze, or am I walking my own path with clear eyes and steady heart? Can I see their silence not as rejection, but as their own struggle with pride and fear? And how can I respond in a way that honors my growth rather than feeds their games? These questions guide you out of confusion and into clarity. They remind you that while you cannot control their ego or silence, you can control your reaction. You can choose peace over chaos, presence over manipulation, and wisdom over reaction. This is the true power in Stoic relationships, to see through the smoke of ego games and hold firm to your own values and boundaries. In doing so, you create space for healthier connections and deeper personal growth. You rise above the silent control and reclaim your emotional freedom. And that is a victory no game can steal from you. 4. They miss who you were, not who you've become. It's a hard truth to face, but often when someone remains silent while still thinking about you, what they truly miss is not the person you are now, but the version of you they once knew, the version that was predictable, available, and easier to control. People do not always grieve the person who has grown and changed. They grieve the access and certainty they once had. They long for the old rhythms of connection, the familiar patterns where emotional boundaries were looser, and their presence was guaranteed without question. Imagine this. They are knocking on the door of your life, but the house has been remodeled. The walls are different, the energy has shifted, and suddenly, the key they once had no longer fits the lock. The person standing behind that door is not the same you they left behind. You have evolved, quietly and intentionally, in ways they never anticipated. This growth can be disarming for them. It forces them to confront the reality that the dynamic they once thrived in no longer exists. They can no longer reach you through the old channels of manipulation, emotional guessing games, or predictable reactions. Instead, they are met with boundaries, calm strength, and emotional independence. This shift unsettles their sense of control and comfort, and rather than stepping up to meet the new you, many freeze in place. They miss the version of you that bent to their will, that answered every call or message, that tolerated mixed signals without question. But you are no longer that person. You have outgrown the patterns that no longer serve your peace or growth. This is the crux of Stoic relationships. The recognition that growth is not a betrayal, but a necessary evolution toward truth and self-mastery. How often do we cling to old versions of ourselves because they are safer, easier to manage? Yet, the person you were yesterday cannot hold space for the person you are becoming today. And those who loved the old, you may struggle to recognize or accept this transformation. They may stay silent, not because they have moved on, but because they do not know how to approach this new version of you. The silence is their way of avoiding the discomfort of change and the humility required to reconnect on new terms. They fear that the evolved you demands more respect, more honesty, more emotional maturity, and they are not ready or willing to meet that demand. This dynamic is painful, but it is also revealing. It shows who values you for your true self and who only valued the access and certainty you once provided. Your silence in this context is not passive. It is a clear signal that you have boundaries and standards that cannot be compromised. It is a form of Stoic strength, refusing to perform or play old roles for those unwilling to grow alongside you. This understanding frees you from the trap of trying to be someone you are not, just to keep the peace or maintain a connection. It invites you to embrace your evolution with pride and clarity. The silent observer on the other side is left to wrestle with their own fears and limitations. They realize that the version of you they loved was, in many ways, the version they controlled. The new you, however, is a force of nature, unpredictable, grounded, and unapologetically sovereign. This realization is disorienting for them because it dismantles the illusion of possession and predictability they once relied on. It confronts them with the necessity of humility and change. Two things, ego and pride, resist fiercely. When you live in alignment with Stoicism, you recognize that growth often comes with loss of old relationships, old roles, and old comforts. But this loss is not a failure. It is a triumph of authenticity. It is the shedding of what no longer nourishes your spirit and the welcoming of a fuller, freer self. As you hold this space for yourself, you become a living example of Stoic relationships where presence is earned through integrity and growth, not entitlement or nostalgia. This presence demands respect, not compliance. It calls for honesty, not convenience, and it inspires those who are ready to grow alongside you while gently but firmly leaving behind those who are not. In this journey, your silence becomes a powerful declaration. You are no longer the version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserve. You are no longer available on old terms. And if they want to reconnect, they must meet you on the new ground you have built. This is not an ultimatum, but a natural boundary of growth and self-respect. It is the essence of Stoicism in action, the discipline to live authentically, even when it means outgrowing others and walking alone. How do you respond when faced with this truth? Do you retreat into old patterns of seeking approval, or do you stand tall in your evolution, knowing that your worth is not defined by others' readiness to accept change? This moment is a test of your commitment to Stoicism, to living a life guided by reason, virtue, and self-mastery. When you embrace this challenge, you step fully into your power. You become the calm center in a sea of uncertainty, the steady flame that burns regardless of who comes or goes. This transformation is not just about them or their silence. It is about you claiming your space, your voice, and your peace. It's about turning your absence from old patterns into a presence of strength and clarity, and it is about cultivating Stoic relationships that honor growth, courage, and truth above all else. So if this resonates with you, and you are ready to embrace your evolution unapologetically, then like and comment #1 below to show you're committed to this path. Subscribe to the channel for more guidance on Stoicism and Stoic relationships that empower you to build emotional resilience and personal mastery. Together, we will rise beyond silence and into the light of authentic connection and growth. 5. Myth of action equals emotion. Why silence doesn't mean they're over you. One of the most persistent misconceptions we hold in relationships is the belief that action equals emotion, that if someone truly cares, they will act, will reach out, will speak up. It is a convenient narrative, but one that often causes more pain and confusion than clarity. We grow up hearing that if they miss you, they will call. If they love you, they will show it. If you matter, they will do something. This idea creates an expectation so rigid that when silence or inaction fills the space instead, it breeds doubt, despair, and endless questioning. But what if this belief is fundamentally flawed? What if silence does not equal absence of feeling? What if the deepest emotions are sometimes the ones too fragile, too overwhelming to be expressed in words or actions? The truth is that people are complicated, emotional creatures, often trapped between what they feel and what they can safely express. Fear, pride, guilt, and vulnerability intertwine to create a complex emotional landscape where action is not always possible, even when feelings run deep. Consider the times in your own life when you have felt something intensely but held back from expressing it. How often have you been silenced by your own fears? Fear of rejection, fear of looking weak, fear of upsetting the delicate balance of a relationship. These fears create invisible chains that bind us, making silence the safer choice than risking exposure. In many ways, silence can be an emotional fortress, built not out of indifference, but out of protection. The person who is silent may be battling their own storms internally, regrets that replay like a broken record, memories that bite like unseen wounds, guilt that circles relentlessly in the dark. These emotional undercurrents are real and powerful, yet they remain hidden because speaking them aloud threatens to shatter the fragile control they cling to. Imagine a volcano, calm and still on the surface, yet beneath the crust molten lava churns with immense pressure, waiting for the right moment to erupt. Their silence is like that volcano, a deceptive calm masking intense inner turmoil. When we interpret silence as peace, we are often blind to the reality that it is pressure in disguise. This is where Stoicism offers profound wisdom: to not judge external appearances alone, but to seek understanding beneath the surface. The myth that action is the only proof of emotion misleads us into undervaluing the power of silence and the courage it sometimes represents. It also traps us in cycles of waiting and wondering, attaching our self-worth to the absence of outward signs. But the Stoic teaches us that our value is inherent, not contingent on others' actions or inactions. The silence you face is not a reflection of your worth, but a mirror of their struggle. A struggle with vulnerability and pride, with fear and hope entwined. How many times have you wanted to reach out but stopped yourself, paralyzed by the very fears you suspect they are facing? How often have you remained silent, not because you no longer cared, but because saying something felt like stepping off a cliff without a net? This shared human experience connects us all, recognizing that they too may be caught in this emotional paralysis helps dissolve resentment and invites compassion, not as an excuse for neglect, but as a deeper understanding of human complexity. At the same time, Stoicism reminds us that understanding does not mean enduring harm or dismissing our needs. It means responding with clarity, maintaining our boundaries, and refusing to be held hostage by silence. The paradox is that while their silence may be born of fear, it inadvertently creates emotional chaos for both parties. It fuels assumptions, misinterpretations, and endless what-ifs that erode peace of mind. The power to break this cycle lies not in forcing action from them, but in reclaiming control over our own emotional responses. When we stop demanding proof through action, we free ourselves from the emotional roller coaster and cultivate resilience. This resilience is the essence of Stoicism applied to relationships, the ability to accept what we cannot change, focus on what is within our control, and act with wisdom and dignity. Another dimension of this truth is that sometimes silence is the last refuge of pride. Admitting emotion publicly requires humility, a quality that ego often resists fiercely. The silent person may be grappling with a wound to their pride that feels too raw to acknowledge. Reaching out would mean lowering their defenses and risking exposure, a prospect more terrifying than enduring loneliness or distance. This internal conflict keeps them locked in silence, caught between what they feel and what they dare to show. As observers, it is crucial to remember that silence in this context is not an absence of emotion, but a protective stance born of inner turmoil. It calls for patience and a steady heart, but Stoicism teaches us to be vigilant against letting patience become passivity. There's a fine line between acceptance and tolerating harm. Your emotional health matters. You are not required to fill the silence with your own voice or to chase what is withheld from you. Instead, your task is to cultivate a strong inner foundation, one that stands firm regardless of external circumstances. In this foundation, you find the peace and clarity to move forward without being tethered to their silence. This clarity allows you to discern when engagement serves growth and when detachment is necessary. The myth that action equals emotion also obscures the complexity of human emotional expression. People show care and love in diverse ways, many of which are subtle or private. Some are simply not wired to express feelings overtly. Others may be processing emotions internally over long periods, wrestling with their own fears and regrets before they are ready to act. This variation challenges the simplistic notion that visible action is the only valid sign of caring. The Stoic path honors this complexity by focusing on our own virtue and character rather than seeking validation from others' behaviors. It invites us to embrace ambiguity and uncertainty without losing our center. So, when silence persists and action is absent, consider this. What is this silence really hiding? Is it absence of feeling or absence of courage? What fears and barriers might be holding them back? And most importantly, how can you protect your peace while navigating this uncertainty? Can you cultivate compassion without losing your strength? Can you embrace the discomfort of not knowing without surrendering your worth? These questions are the gateway to Stoic relationships where emotional power is not measured by noise or reaction, but by calm presence and self-mastery. In this space, you learn to respect your own journey of growth, even when others cannot or will not meet you halfway. You become the calm in your own storm, unshaken by silence and undeterred by absence. You move forward with dignity, clarity, and unwavering self-respect. This transformation is not easy. It requires courage to face the void of silence and uncertainty. Without flinching, it demands a commitment to personal growth and emotional discipline, but it is also deeply liberating. When you no longer need others' action to define your worth, you reclaim your power. You step into the highest expression of Stoicism in relationships, the ability to remain whole, grounded and clear no matter what others choose to do or not do. This is the true victory over the myth of action equaling emotion. It is the realization that your peace and growth are not contingent on their courage or communication. They are born within you, nurtured by your own wisdom and strength. And that ultimately is what sets Stoic relationships apart. The recognition that true connection arises not from dependency, but from mutual respect, courage, and inner freedom. 6. Control reversal. How your silence shifts the power dynamic. In relationships, control is often an unspoken currency, a silent tug-of-war that shapes interactions and emotional landscapes. When someone who once held the power through consistent attention and emotional availability suddenly encounters your silence, the entire dynamic begins to shift, quietly but profoundly. This shift, known as control reversal, occurs when you stop reacting, stop chasing, and instead anchor yourself in calm detachment. The person who used to steer the emotional narrative finds themselves unmoored, unsure of where they stand, and increasingly desperate to regain the influence they once wielded. Imagine that dynamic. They were the driver, controlling the speed, the direction, the stops and starts of the emotional journey. You, as the passenger, responded to their cues, adjusted to their pace, and maintained the connection on their terms. But now you have stepped out of the car altogether, walking your own path with steady purpose. The driver, once confident in their control, is left alone at the wheel, confused and unsettled. This is the essence of control reversal, a powerful recalibration where your silence is not a void, but a force that disrupts the familiar patterns of power and influence. It shakes the foundation of their assumed dominance and forces them into unfamiliar territory where they must reckon with their loss of control. What makes this shift so impactful is its subtlety. It doesn't manifest as confrontation or aggression, but as quiet, unwavering resolve. Your silence becomes a statement of self-possession, a declaration that you no longer respond to emotional manipulation or coercion. In Stoicism, this is the highest form of mastery, to maintain inner peace regardless of external attempts to provoke or destabilize. The driver's panic may not be visible, but inside, a storm brews. They check your profiles repeatedly, reanalyze old conversations, and try to decode the new silence that has replaced their accustomed reactions. This internal turmoil reflects a profound loss of certainty and power. They believed you were theirs to command, that your emotions were there in playground. But now their grip slips, and with it their sense of control unravels. For you, this moment is a triumph of Stoic discipline. You have reclaimed your emotional sovereignty and redefined the terms of engagement. You are no longer the reactive player, but the composed strategist who sets the pace with intention and calm. This shift is unsettling for them because it confronts them with an unvarnished truth. They do not own your emotions. They cannot dictate your responses or control your peace. The power they once exerted was never truly theirs. It was granted by your willingness to engage on their terms. By withdrawing that engagement, you reclaimed the power that was always within you. This realization can be disorienting, even frightening, for those used to emotional dominance. They may attempt to regain control through subtle tests, ambiguous messages, passive-aggressive posts, or calculated disappearances, hoping to elicit a reaction. But Stoic mastery means recognizing these tests for what they are and refusing to be baited. Your silence becomes a shield, not a surrender. It is the unspoken refusal to be drawn into old dramas or power struggles. This refusal changes the entire emotional economy of the relationship. The person who once thrived on your reactions is left grasping in the dark, forced to face their own fears and insecurities without your emotional energy to distract or soothe them. How often have you felt trapped in cycles of emotional chasing, trying to prove your value through response and availability? Control reversal breaks these chains by shifting the focus inward, cultivating self-worth independent of others' actions. This shift is the heart of Stoic relationships, connections where power is balanced, boundaries respected, and emotional sovereignty honored. It is a radical departure from patterns of dependency, manipulation, and control. In this space, you model the Stoic ideal of apatheia, freedom from destructive passions, not by suppressing emotion, but by mastering your response to it. You demonstrate that true strength lies in calmness and clarity, not reaction or noise. This transformation is not just about them losing control. It is about you gaining freedom. You step into your full power as the architect of your emotional life. No longer subject to the tides of others' moods or manipulations, you move with intention, guided by reason and virtue rather than impulse or fear. And that is the ultimate victory of control reversal. It is a reclaiming of the self that is rooted in Stoicism's core principles: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. By embracing silence as a tool of empowerment, you disrupt old power structures and invite new possibilities for authentic connection or healthy detachment. This shift challenges both parties to grow or to walk away with dignity. It refuses to entertain games or manipulation, demanding honesty and integrity instead. So what does this mean for you in practical terms? It means choosing when and how to engage with presence and purpose, rather than out of obligation or fear of loss. It means cultivating boundaries that protect your peace and refusing to chase emotional validation. It means recognizing that your silence is not absence, but presence, a powerful statement of who you are and what you will no longer tolerate. As you hold this space, you become a living embodiment of Stoicism in relationships, showing that power is not about dominance, but about mastery of self. This mastery inspires respect and demands accountability. It unsettles those who sought to control, but also invites those who are willing to meet you as an equal partner in growth. And if you resonate with this journey, if you are ready to step into this level of emotional sovereignty, then like and comment #1 below to affirm your commitment. Subscribe to the channel for more guidance on Stoicism and Stoic relationships, where we explore how to build resilience, clarity, and peace in the face of life's greatest emotional challenges. Together, we will rise above the noise and become the calm in our own storms. In the end, silence is never as simple as it seems. When someone thinks about you but won't make a move, their silence carries layers of fear, pride, vulnerability, and inner conflict. It is a language of its own, sometimes a shield, sometimes a prison, sometimes a test, yet none of this defines your worth or your power. The truth that Stoicism imparts is this: your peace is not dependent on others' courage or their willingness to speak. Your value is inherent, rooted in your own reason, virtue, and self-mastery. Understanding why they remain silent offers clarity, but it also frees you from the exhausting cycle of waiting and hoping. It invites you to rise above emotional turmoil and reclaim your sovereignty, to embrace silence not as emptiness, but as strength, to transform absence into presence. As you move through this journey, remember that Stoic relationships are not about controlling others or demanding proof of care. They are about cultivating inner resilience, setting boundaries with compassion, and walking your path with clarity and calm. The power of your silence is that it disrupts old patterns, shifts the balance of control, and creates space for authentic growth, both for you and for those who are ready to meet you as you are. You no longer need to chase validation or explanations. You stand grounded in your own truth, unshaken by silence or absence. This is the highest expression of Stoicism in relationships, the freedom to be whole, regardless of external circumstances. So carry this wisdom with you as a shield and a guide. Let it remind you that your journey is one of growth, courage, and unwavering self-respect. And no matter the silence you face, your peace remains your greatest strength, your silent power that speaks louder than words ever could.